She hasn't sat alone for more than 2 minutes today. The crying, the touch, the constant noise, poo-poo, none of it stops.
The crying, the touch, the constant noise to hide approval, none of it stops.
But this isn't weakness. After birth, the brain stays in high alert mode, cook, designed
Twitches as per Switwitch laugh. So if noise, touch, and crying feel unbearable some days,
After birth, many mothers are surprised by something they were never warned about.
Not the sleepless nights, not the physical recovery, but how deeply overwhelming ordinary sensations suddenly feel. The sound of crying doesn't just register as noise, it cuts straight through the body. A hand pulling at your shirt doesn't feel neutral, it feels invasive. Even gentle touch can feel like too much. And then comes the quiet fear. Why am I reacting like this? What's wrong with me? Nothing is wrong. According to research from Harvard University's Center on the Developing Child, the postpartum brain does not return to a normal baseline after delivery. It stays in a heightened state of sensitivity, especially to sound, movement, and touch. This is not emotional weakness, it is biological adaptation. The maternal brain is designed to detect threat instantly. Crying, sudden noise, constant physical contact, these signals activate survival circuits that evolved to keep an infant alive. The brain treats them as urgent, not optional. Oxford psychology research explains that during early parenthood, the nervous system spends extended periods in a state of hyperarousal. This means the brain's filtering system, the part that normally helps us ignore background noise or mild discomfort, becomes less effective. So everything comes through all at once and without a volume control. This is why overstimulation feels physical, not just mental. Your heart rate rises, your jaw tightens, your skin feels sensitive. You're not losing patience. Your nervous system is overloaded. The American Psychological Association has repeatedly documented that chronic sensory overload is one of the strongest predictors of parental burnout, especially in the first year after birth. Not because parents lack coping skills, but because the brain is being asked to do too much for too long without recovery. And here's the part almost no one explains clearly. Babies are born with immature nervous systems. The American Academy of Pediatrics notes that newborns cannot self-regulate stress. They don't calm themselves. They borrow calm from the adult holding them. This process is called co-regulation. When a baby cries, their nervous system is in chaos. The adult's body becomes the external stabilizer through voice, warmth, and presence. That means your nervous system is constantly working for two. But co-regulation does not mean control. Trying to stay calm through sheer willpower often backfires. The NIH has shown that suppressing stress responses actually increases nervous system activation over time. The body doesn't relax because it's told to. It relaxes when it feels safe enough to do so. That's why overstimulation often peaks when mothers try hardest to be patient. It's not a failure of character. It's a mismatch between demand and recovery. Touch becomes overwhelming not because you don't love your child, but because your body has not had enough moments of being untouched. Sound becomes unbearable not because you're sensitive, but because your brain hasn't had silence to recalibrate. Repair matters more than perfection. Harvard researchers emphasize that brief moments of rupture, irritation, pulling away, needing space, do not harm children when followed by repair. A pause, a return, a regulated adult coming back. What damages both parent and child is the belief that you must never feel overwhelmed. Your nervous system is not asking you to be better, it's asking you to be supported. When mothers understand that overstimulation is biology, not personal failure, something shifts. The shame loosens, the body softens, and regulation becomes possible again. Not through control, but through compassion. This stage is intense because it is meant to be temporary. The brain will recalibrate, sensitivity will decrease, capacity will return. Until then, feeling overstimulated does not mean you are doing something wrong. It means your system is doing exactly what it was designed to do. Protect, respond, and care, even when it costs you comfort. And that truth deserves to be spoken out loud. There's another layer to maternal overstimulation that almost no one talks about because it doesn't look dramatic from the outside. It looks like a mother sitting on the couch staring at nothing. It looks like irritation over small sounds. It looks like zoning out while someone is talking to her. And yet inside her body something very real is happening. Modern motherhood places an unprecedented cognitive and sensory load on the nervous system. This is not opinion, this is documented. Research from the National Institutes of Health shows that cognitive load, the amount of information the brain must hold, track, and respond to, has increased significantly for parents in the last 2 decades. Mothers are not just caring for a child. They are managing schedules, safety, feeding philosophies, sleep advice, developmental milestones, social expectations, and constant self-monitoring, and the brain does not separate emotional labor from physical labor. To the nervous system, it is all demand. Every decision, when to feed, how to respond, whether to intervene, requires mental energy. And when those decisions are layered on top of sleep deprivation, hormonal fluctuation, and constant sensory input, the system reaches saturation quickly. And this is why overstimulation often peaks in moments that should feel calm. When the baby finally sleeps, when there is quiet, and when help arrives, because the nervous system doesn't shut off on command. According to Harvard's Center on the Developing Child, stress recovery requires predictability and perceived safety, not just absence of noise. If a mother's body does not believe rest will last, it does not enter true recovery mode, so even silence can feel tense. This is why mothers often report feeling more overwhelmed after guests leave or after the baby falls asleep. Their bodies are finally noticing the exhaustion that was postponed. Now add hormones to this equation. Postpartum hormonal shifts affect neurotransmitters involved in emotional regulation, sensory processing, and stress tolerance. Estrogen and progesterone fluctuations influence serotonin and dopamine pathways, the same systems involved in mood stability and sensory filtering. This means sensations that once registered as neutral can now feel intrusive. Touch can feel too much.
Noise can feel sharp.
Crying can feel unbearable. This is not a psychological weakness. It is neurochemical reality. The American Psychiatric Association emphasizes that postpartum sensory sensitivity exists on a spectrum, not only in cases of postpartum depression or anxiety, but in healthy mothers adapting to intense caregiving demands. And yet, many women dismiss their experience because it doesn't match the stereotypes. They're not crying all day. They're functioning. They're caring for their child. So they assume they shouldn't be struggling. But functioning is not the same as regulated. A dysregulated nervous system can still perform tasks. It just does so at a cost. That cost often shows up as emotional numbness, irritability, or guilt. And here's something especially important. Overstimulation is not caused only by the baby. It is caused by the lack of containment around the mother. In earlier caregiving environments, extended families, shared responsibilities, cultural pauses, mothers were rarely the sole regulators of an infant's world.
Today, many mothers are. They are the primary emotional anchor, the primary sensory buffer, the primary responder. This level of responsibility requires intentional support structures, but many mothers are expected to self-regulate through it alone. Oxford University research on caregiving stress highlights that prolonged co-regulation without adequate support increases emotional fatigue and reduces stress resilience. In simple terms, you cannot pour calm into another nervous system indefinitely without refilling your own. This is why advice focused only on the baby often misses the point. Sleep training, feeding schedules, behavioral techniques, they may address symptoms, but they don't address the system that is overloaded. What actually helps is reducing the total sensory and emotional input the mother is carrying. This might mean fewer voices, less advice, clearer boundaries, more predictable routines, not just for the baby, but for the caregiver. It also means normalizing withdrawal as a form of regulation, not rejection. When a mother needs space, it is not because she is disconnected. It is because her nervous system is saturated. The concept of good enough parenting, introduced by pediatrician and psychoanalyst Donald Winnicott, is deeply relevant here. Children do not need constant attunement. They need repair. They need to experience that relationships can pause and resume safely. Stepping back to regulate is not abandonment. It is modeling nervous system literacy. And here is where many mothers feel conflicted. They fear that taking space will harm the child. They fear disconnection. But the science is clear. The American Academy of Pediatrics emphasizes that caregiver emotional health is a protective factor for child development. A regulated caregiver creates a safer environment than a constantly available but overwhelmed one. This reframes the entire conversation. The goal is not endless patience, it is sustainable presence, and sustainability requires limits. Another factor that intensifies overstimulation is expectation mismatch. Modern parents are often told what children should be able to do: self-soothe, adapt, be flexible, without being taught what their brains are actually capable of. Infant and toddler brains are dominated by subcortical regions responsible for survival and emotion. The prefrontal cortex, responsible for impulse control and emotional regulation, is under construction for years. So when crying feels relentless, it is not because the child is demanding too much. It is because their nervous system has no brakes yet. And when the mother feels overwhelmed by that crying, it is because her nervous system is absorbing it repeatedly. This mutual dysregulation is not a failure of parenting. It is a developmental reality. Understanding this reduces reactivity, not by suppressing feelings, but by contextualizing them. When parents stop interpreting overwhelm as a personal flaw, their nervous systems soften. Self-compassion is not indulgence, it is regulation. Studies in psychophysiology show that self-criticism increases cortisol levels. while self-compassion activates parasympathetic responses, the body's calming system. So the internal dialogue matters, not to be positive, but to be accurate. This is hard because it is hard, not because I am failing.
And then there is the question mothers quietly ask themselves.
Will this damage my child? The answer, supported by decades of attachment research, is no, not when repair exists. Children are remarkably resilient when caregivers return, reconnect, and regulate. What harms children is not occasional overwhelm. It is chronic emotional unavailability without repair, and repair does not require long explanations.